This book is my spiritual journey. Last week when I was at the postgrad module talking about the book, I came out because I hadn't talked about it in that way before. It was only a couple of days previous to that I'd even thought about it like that before. And it's my spiritual journey because it contains my spiritual journey. I started this on that day that Jane was talking about, not to walk again. I didn't think I'd ever walk again. At that point, I was being bathed every day. On that day, I couldn't lift a glass to my mouth without spilling it, like that. But halfway through the blue mist meditation, I experienced bliss. And I'd experienced once before, in 2004, in my first MS event. And that day too, I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow, and I was in so much pain. But I became so still. And I moved into the space between. And that's where God is, in the spaces between. And in that state, it doesn't matter whether you've got MS. It doesn't matter whether your relationship's falling apart, whether you're going broke. You are part of this wonderful creation that we all live in. And that stillness, that peace, is worth more than anything. So when I sat that day in that meditation with Andrew and the rest of you, some of whom are here now, and experienced that again, I decided that it was time for me to learn how to live in that place and how to teach other people how to live in that place, particularly people with disabilities. And somehow I was planning to do the meditation teacher training course the following year, and somehow between Trish and Monica and then Andrew, I ended up applying for the yoga teacher training course. These people must be mad. How can a person in a wheelchair teach yoga? How can a person in a wheelchair do yoga? Well, a couple of months later, in May 2007, I turned up to my first module in my power chair. Yeah. I was a bit of a hoon, I have to say, and I do apologise for those toes I've run over. There are many of them. And I visualised and meditated and relaxed for 4 days. How awesome. And then the next day I went into hospital and I had surgery. And I woke up from the surgery and I couldn't move anything. I didn't know where my bladder was, let alone how to control it. And everyone around me started panicking. I guess it's a pretty scary thing. But what I noticed is that I breathed. I relaxed. And the panic that they were in was affecting their decision-making. It was affecting how they could deal with me, emotionally as well as intellectually. And it wasn't affecting me. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't in crisis. I was perfectly calm and centered. What a wonderful state to be in. So I continued visualizing EBR1, the cat, the dog, the tree, and relaxing and meditating. What a best friend that has become. Extraordinary. Whenever I feel alone, bank queues are never a problem. I visualize, relax, and meditate everywhere, all the time. People ask me how many hours a day I practice, and I kind of, 1 or 2. The reality is I practice all the time, and if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be standing. My prognosis was nursing home. I have more scarring on my brain now than I did in 2007, and yet I stand here in front of you quite functional, physically at least. I'll let other people decide the rest. Talk to my children. But it was a spiritual thing. It was to get that sense of peace, that sense of calmness, that alignment, that I was in alignment with myself, with my higher self. And so I went home from that and I literally practiced all the time. I would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and visualise EBR1. I would practice the spinal wave until I could get vertebra moving one at a time. And the tree. And I would use kosher language. I just went wild because it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it physically, so I could stand up in the tree for a long time, imagining, you know, I'm receiving the sun, I'm growing, and I could be there for a lot longer than you can physically. Fabulous. I turned up to Module 2 thinking, oh my God, all of these people are going to have been practicing it for all of this time, and all I've been doing is thinking about it. I felt so unprepared, out of my depth, all of those unwords that aren't good. I arrived, looking around at everybody. Everybody else, funnily enough, was feeling underprepared, but I didn't know that. And one of our first exercises, there were two things that we did that quite surprised me. One of them was that we had a small group exercise where we had to share. I have never shared in my life, up until that time. Up until this time. I had never shared anything about myself of any intimacy to anyone, if I could possibly avoid it. I was so disenfranchised from who I am, or who I was. So we sat in this small group and everyone was talking about their experiences, and I'm going, what am I going to say? In the back of my head's going, I've just been thinking about this. So when it came to my turn, I told them I'd just been thinking about it. And someone asked me, or Trish asked how the group could help me. And someone said, do we lift your arms up? And I said, no. I said, when I get to a point where I stop, which is normally physically about here, certainly was then, I just imagine energy going down my arm and use the energy going down my arm to lift my arm the rest of the way. And it floats up all by itself. And that's how I did my yoga. And I looked at Trish and Trish went, and I thought, oh my God, I said something wrong. And it wasn't till years later, well, you know, there's only so many years between 2007 and now. But, you know, like it felt like a long time of me thinking I'd done something wrong. Trish said, no, it wasn't that you'd done something wrong. That's the work of masters. I'm going, yeah, right. But that was the first thing. The second thing was that when we were doing EBR1, I noticed there were people going, where was the spinal wave? And I'm going, no, you don't do it like that. You do it like this. And I ended up being able to teach my peers the spinal wave. And I didn't even know I could do it physically until that point. I didn't know that I had the muscles. I didn't know that I had the physical coordination or control to do it. And I still do, thankfully. And it had been those months and months of visualising, hours, 2 o'clock in the morning, practising, wanting to get rid of the blocks in my spine so I could feel that peace, so I could feel that lovely feeling of the energy rippling up my spine and out of my crown. And so then I thought, well, if I can do that with yoga, maybe I can do that with life. So I went home and I had a mentoring with Andrew, and he talked to me about my river of gold and where was it, and I didn't know I had a river of gold until that point, but I do. We all do, by the way. You just got to spend some time and find it. Apparently what I was doing when I was sending energy down my arm was sending my river of gold down my arm. I now use that constantly in relaxation, and it's a really, really powerful tool for people. So I went away and I spent some time thinking about walking. I have a little girl, and she was